I knew that when I started university as a first generation student, I was bound to make a lot of mistakes, within my first semester. And I thought of covering three things that I wish I knew when I started school at McGill University. And, I hope to make your transition to university a much easier and a much, happier process. One, for the things I wish I knew would be that everyone should learn to embrace change. Most of you will be going from your home country and your home comfort zone to like a completely new setting, and you need to be okay with coming to terms with the fact that your life might completely change, and that everything that you've been accustomed to in high school for the last 12 years might not even apply anymore. So the favorite subtopic that I want to grab under this item is the education system and your education in general. The education system you might have been exposed to in school might not be the education system that you have in your university, and you need to learn to all. I'm not saying master the change right away, but just understand that there is certain changes that you need to make in the way you might work in the first place, right? So for example, in the North American education system, it's mostly like your academic commitment is gauged by the amount of consistent effort that you give. I remember that when I was back in school, we went through the British curriculum, where you basically give a final exam at the end of 2 years, and that was how I was studying in high school, where I was waiting to the last minute to kind of study, and I did completely fine. But I realized that that doesn't work at university, because you're gauged with a completely different standard. So I had to learn how to adjust to that and be more consistent with the effort that I gave. Not that I didn't work as hard before, but it was just a different style of working. It was more of you need to take chunks of things every day. I'm not someone who's used to studying every day, but I had to embrace the change. And I think I made a mistake of not doing that in my first semester, where I kept things to the last minute also. And the follow-up to that is never underestimate the exams that you have at university, or never underestimate the challenges that you're presented at university. And I'm not trying to say that to scare you, right? But I'm also trying to give a realistic picture of how things look like at university, because a lot of people, what I've seen that they do, and even me, maybe internally I had this conflict where I'm not the best student at university anymore, or I'm not one of the best students at university anymore. The thing with that is when you don't accept the fact that there might be many people as good as you fail to see how university might push you in the first place. Because what you need to understand is, in high school there might have been 2 kids who are as great as you, or have the same skill set as you. But once you go to university and once you specialize on a specific field, you're going to find thousands or maybe even 10,000s of people who are as great as you. So when people kind of set exams at these universities, they're going to set exams to differentiate between these highly skilled people. So you need to embrace this change that you might not be the undisputed best student in that class. And I think that's really, really okay. It's just a matter of realizing that and understanding that you might need to work harder. When you come into your first year of university, it might be very close to the things you did in school, because it's still your first year and there are going to be a bunch of intro classes. But don't underestimate those classes, because I don't know how it is at every university, but I think this is similar, where an intro course is not really an intro course. Even though they teach you all of this stuff that might sound familiar, they're going to give you harder problems to face with the same content and the same fundamentals. And keep it in mind that there might be other students who learn the same thing, and the universities are aware of it. So just keep that in mind, that things might be at an elevated level of difficulty, and that's what is supposed to happen when you are going to go to a bigger stage in life. You're leveling up, and some things might push you much more than you think it does, but trust me, you get used to it. It's just as long as you embrace a change and embrace that pivotal moment of your life, you're going to do absolutely great. And I can definitely confirm that. Now I shall move on to tip number 2, or item number 2, and that is that making new friends rather is pretty great. Because, and the reason why I'm rather saying that is because I thought when I started out at university, a lot of people that I was surrounded with weren't as nice as me, I would say. I hope that's not a blasphemous thing to say, but people weren't as welcoming to me. uh, and I'm thinking, I'm looking back, I'm thinking maybe I wasn't as welcoming either, because I was put into a completely different situation. I didn't even come here with like my mother or my brother or like anyone in my family, so this was a completely new setting for me to kind of like get adjusted to. There were obviously a few people who were very, very nice to me, but in terms of like my classmates and people around, there were like only a few. So I felt like I was very alone, and I was like, okay, like like it's fine, like I'm just gonna figure things out alone and just do things alone. But when my second semester came around, and when I met like all of my like friends, like my good friends who I hang out with right now, who I literally share a house with right now, my life completely changed emotionally and even as like an academic, right? If you're taking the same classes with your friends, for example, like you'll benefit so much from that, because y'all are all in it together. So like if someone finds something hard, they'll be assisting you with that. And then when you partner up with like people around, you'll see that everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, and you can help each other to kind of like counter those weaknesses too. And then when you kind of step out and go to the exams, and when you do your classes and you do your assignments and midterms and whatever, you have a good support system to kind of do it with. So that's great. And honestly, like with my case, like I'm so glad I found my friends in my second semester. My first semester, like I met a bunch of friends, but I wasn't as close, and I was very closed up in my first semester, and that was probably the worst semester of mine in terms of like emotion, in terms of how comfortable I was feeling, and even in terms of like academics. I think the only thing that I really did well is just networking, going to events, and making connections. But making friends is a completely different thing. It's a more genuine, a more raw connection that you have with someone. And I think everyone should kind of step out of the comfort zone. I'm very proud of my own story, but I think I want to make life easier for other people, so that's just a tip that I would give someone. And the last tip number 3, is taking care of yourself. It is, and I know this sounds really cliche, but I'm not trying to make this cliche, but what I'm trying to say is that you'll see from the get-go that university is going to host a bunch of burnouts. In the first semester itself, you're going to see a bunch of people who are going to just be burning out within the first 3 weeks of campus. And it's a very bad cycle to fall into if you're going to burn out, because I was talking to my one of my mentors, Zaf, and what he told me about burning out is that once you lose that energy that you have, that energy you literally cannot gain back. I like to call these sleep Olympics, where people, or lack of sleep Olympics rather, where people just constantly talk about, oh, I slept for 1 hour, I slept for 4 hours. What kind of a weird flex is, flexing about the number of hours you slept? And honestly, I fell into that trap too. I'm not like, I'm not like a saint or anything. I fell into this trap too, and I was flexing about, oh, I only sleep like 4 hours. Why does that make sense? It does not make any sense. It does not make any biological sense, and that's not something that you need to get into. And small things like in fitness and taking care of yourself, being healthy, eating healthy, all of those things matter. I initially thought that productivity is, and just like success in general is just a series of events of just working hard. And because our generation is exposed to people like Gary Vaynerchuk and all of that, and I'm not trying to like throw any shade at anyone, but like that hustle culture is not what you deserve, or that maybe hustle culture is not the way to kind of like go about things. Like maybe there is this good balance where you can get good strategic rest, and you can also put attention to the things that you love. Always remember that university is like, it's one part of your life. I think your life is much bigger than your university. You're much more than a GPA. You're much more than your extracurriculars. You're much more than your academics. You're a human being. So make sure you take care of yourself, and make sure that you constantly do things that you love, because at the end of the day, the biggest flex isn't oh, I got to XYZ company, I got to a big fan company, or I got to do this. It's honestly not that. It's just the process, the journey, and how you enjoy this journey, how you got better personally, and where you are because of that journey. Always remember that that's what's important. Focus on the process, trust the process, and just make sure that you enjoy this ride, because you don't want to fall into a trap where you're just going to be miserable by the end of it. That's not how university looks like, and that's not how it's supposed to be. I hope you learned a good bunch of lessons from this, and I hope you don't make the same mistakes that I made. This is just an honest summary of how you could go about things. And I'm very glad if that helped you. Thank you.